OEW was extensively involved. In fact, they were the ones reviewing the so-called, quote, funding request deliverables from Parks Alliance through, for some reason, they get funneled through an employee of OEWD first. So I would urge Member Schmidt maybe to explain more about Community Youth Athletic Center. I think it absolutely applies here, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Yes, hi, this is Mary Ann Thompson from OEWD, and I would like to make a public comment.
Just a second.
Thank you.
Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think you are right in not finding DPW in violation. I think it's really important to understand two things. DPW and OEWD worked together to respond to Mr. Hooper's requests. OEWD did indeed provide Mr. Hooper with the contracts with the Parks Alliance and with the deliverables. It also needs to be made clear that the funding for the Mission Dolores Greater Green Benefits District was funding that was given to us from a previous supervisor. And that's why that contract went through OEWD's office. It was an add back that came from the District 8 supervisors. And finally, I'd like to point out to everyone here this evening that Mr. Hooper, who claims he has no access to technology, tonight has been citing the emails he received from Mr. Henkel to support his argument against Mr. Steinberg. So he either did or did not receive the emails from Mr. Henkel, or he is somehow finding these mysterious documents. So I would like to point this out to you, that he's quoting emails that he said to you, in my case, that he didn't receive and he wasn't able to open. So I'm not sure where he got this information. And that's my final comment.
Any other public comment?
Mr. Chairman, John Hooper, may I just correct the record?
No. I understand that that something may have been said that you may not agree with, but I can't allow a debate from a party, a public commenter.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, I will say this. I'm reading on page 2126 of item 9, part 1 PDF. This is the original request dated February 11th, 2019 to OEWD Public Works, Rec and Park, Parks Alliance, and the organizing committees of Greater Vista Green Benefits District and Mission Dolores Green Benefits District, the formation committees. Okay, and the requests are made from all of them for the original, what started out being 9 requests. So what's ended up happening here is that the complaints were brought independently of each department at this point. And so I'm just listening to what folks are saying. I hear that the department has provided all that they think they have, or they know that they have, that there is some concerns from task force members and from the petitioner that there most likely is more. I hear from one of the public commenters that citing case law that that the information is to be treated from the contractor itself, is to be treated as such. And frankly, there is actual verbiage in the Sunshine Ordinance that is specifically to be used in every contract. And I know because I'm on the board of directors of a nonprofit that receives city funding, and there's all kinds of Sunshine Ordinance requirements in those contracts. So, I think that there is some obligation here. I'm not, while DPW may not have the records in their hands right now, I am compelled by another public commenter's reiterating 6721C, and I think that is compelling to me, that a custodian shall assist a requester in identifying the existence, the form, and nature of any records or information maintained by or available to or in the custody of the custodian, whether or not the contents of those records are exempt or not. So the question is the question here on C is a little, it's not quite as extensive because it's whether it's maintained, available to, or in the custody of the custodian. Are any of this information with regards to contracts with Parks Alliance available to the custodian? I'm pretty sure if DPW went to Parks Alliance and said, hey, can I see your invoices from OEWD, that they would probably give it to them. Okay, I think Member Schmidt was implying that that should be done. That should have been done. This is all part, again, I'd say this is all part of the same executive branch. Because the request is being made of each and every department that didn't comply or didn't, that were part and parcel to this, that may or may not have records, is, sure, it may be considered a fishing expedition. But okay, you're going to get some records from one department. You may get the records from it. You might not get records from another department. But I think the real focus is on the contract is with the city. Okay, and the question is who has full control and access to that contract? Because if Parks Alliance is providing a service to the city that it would normally have staff do, then again, it's like filling potholes. That anything that is within the jurisdiction of that contract is public information. So versus, as I explained before, receiving like a grant or funding to operate a third party operation of some sort that doesn't provide a direct benefit to the city government or as a service to city government. So I'm compelled by this in a way, and I'm a little torn about which way to vote on it because of that. So I'll just stop there, Vice Chair Yankee.
I absolutely understand where you're coming from, and I'm sure everyone's kind of torn on this. I think, in fact, and I forget when it was mentioned, but there was a chain of communication brought up not too long ago about something in the contract being approved, and I believe it went from Parks Alliance, the communication, to OEWD. OEWD then went and checked with DPW. DPW responded back to OEWD, and presumably OEWD then communicated with Parks Alliance, the contractor, right? So I think this demonstrates to me that it's OEWD and Parks Alliance who are the two parties in communication with each other. It showed that Parks Alliance wasn't, in this case, reaching out directly to DPW and saying, hey, did this fulfill things? No, they went to OEWD. OEWD forwarded that to DPW for approval. We all know both departments are involved in it, but so the question is, can DPW directly go to Parks Alliance. And not just could they, but is it a violation of the Sunshine Ordinance if they didn't? Maybe they could have asked potentially, but does it mean they violate the Sunshine Ordinance? I just don't see that, because they knew OEWD was in communication with Parks Alliance, because we saw those emails showing that OEWD and Parks Alliance were the two parties in communication with each other. And so I don't think it's a violation on DPW's part to refer those requests back to OEWD. So I'll just leave it there. I know it's getting late and probably should wrap this up.
Okay, Member LaHood.
I'll make it quick. I agree with Chair Wolf. I think available to, it was definitely available to if they had taken the additional step of asking for it.
Okay, are you ready for a vote? Okay. Please call the roll.
Okay. Member Yankee?
Aye.
Member Yankee, aye. Member LaHood?
Member Highland
No.
seconded it.
Sorry, Member Highland, I apologize. Member Highland?
Aye. Aye.
Member Padmanabhan?
Nay.
Member Padmanabhan, no. Member Neighbors?
Nay.
Member Neighbors, no. Member Stein?
Nay.
Member Stein, no. Member Forsley, absent. Member Schmidt?
Nay.
Member Schmidt, no. Member Wong?
Aye.
Member Wong, aye. Member LaHood?
No.
Member LaHood, no. Chair Wolf?
No.
Chair Wolf, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The noes have it.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to find a violation of 6721C and order the DPW to request such records from Parks Alliance that may be available to them because they currently have contracts with them and access to them, and for this to be referred to compliance and amendments for monitoring. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Who is that speaking?
That was Member LaHood.
Okay, moved by the chair, Wolf, second by Member LaHood, to find a violation of 6721C and to order DPW to assist the requester in identifying, and just, you can take it right from 6721C. Assist the requester in identifying the existence, form, and nature of the records that the requester is requesting, and or information maintained by, available to, or in the custody of the custodian, whether or not the contents of those records are exempt from disclosure, and shall, when requested to do so, provide in writing within 7 days following the receipt of the request. Well, actually, in this part, I would say, let's give it 2 weeks, okay? Because I know everybody's trying to get back into their offices and get back to work. So give it 14 days, and that compliance and amendments will monitor. Okay, public comment.
Sure.
Hang on a second. Lila, you were the second? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Okay. Do we have any public commenters?
Hearing.
Yes.
Okay, do we have others?
Yes, anonymous number 3.
Okay, Mr. Warfield, you may begin.
This is Peter Warfield. Library Users Association. I'm happy to hear this motion being made, and I'm happy to hear Chair Wolf's comments as well as the others that were commenting on this motion. I guess it's looks like it's going to be the reverse in terms of yeses and nos of the previous motion, which was for no violation. This is for a violation. I'm glad it's going to compliance. I'm glad you have a time limit. Excuse me. So yes, I think this is absolutely a yes vote, and basically cuts through attempts and practices of basically baffle gab and sending people running around in circles because on some technical level you haven't got the goods in some file drawer or in some database or something like that, which shouldn't be done to folks who in good faith are seeking information. So thank you for the motion and certainly support it. Thank you.
Just a second, Anonymous. I'll be right with you.
No problem.
Are you ready, sir?
I am.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Agree with every single point Mr. Warfield made. This is going to be a hard motion. It's going to require all 6 votes that were no on the last one to be yes here. Otherwise, I believe if there's no motion, Mr. Hooper loses by default. And so I'm going to give you some more reasons why you should vote yes. This is the Appendix B, definition of grant plan from an OEWD supplemental record provided as we discussed in the last hearing to me. It has project definitions. There's a term called Cities Team. It has 3 members, Christopher Corgus, Senior Program Manager, OEWD, Jonathan Goldberg, Program Manager, Public Works, and Helen Marr, Project Specialist, OEWD. It mentions 2 project areas surrounding Buena Vista Park and Dolores Park, and it mentions Inner Sunset GBD. The Public Works is integrally involved. They are part of the, quote, cities team, a defined term in the appendix of the grant plan. They should, and not just under the Sunshine Ordinance, to be clear, I of course believe the Sunshine Ordinance requires them, but I'm saying even under the weaker CPRA, courts have found that they should properly instruct their contractors under Community Youth Athletic Center versus City of National City. And so you absolutely should vote yes. This is finally a way to cut through how do you get at the contractors. And I urge you to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Last call, public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Members, any last thoughts? Are we ready for a vote? Okay, please call the roll.
Chair Wolf.
Aye.
Chair Wolf, aye. Member LaHood.
Aye.
Member LaHood, aye. Member Padmanabhan.
Aye.
Member Padmanabhan, aye. Member Neighbors.
Aye.
Member Neighbors, aye. Member Stein.
Aye.
Member Stein, aye. Member Forsley, absent. Member Schmidt.
Aye.
Member Schmidt, aye. Member Wong.
Aye.
Member Wong, aye. Member Yankee.
No.
Member Highland.
Aye.
Member Highland, aye. Moved by Chair Wolf, second by Member LaHood, to find a violation of 6721C and order DPW to assist the requester in identifying the existence, form, and nature of the records the requester is requesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask for clarification, please?
Who's speaking?
This is David Steinberg.
Yes.
I just want to clarify exactly what records am I supposed to ask Parks Alliance for? Presumably not the same ones that Ms. Thompson already asked and they said they didn't have, but what is there anything specific I'm supposed to be asking for?
I believe it's the financial documents. The ones that you said that you didn't have.
The ones that Ms. Thompson already provided to them. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Steinberg, I just want to say that just because one department provided it to somebody doesn't mean that you're absolved from it. Okay?
Yeah, I know. That's why I redirected them to OEWD.
I understand that, but the records that were provided at the time of the request, not now, but at the time of the request, that's what we're talking about here. This is happening in the period of time that the request was made and not fulfilled.
Okay, I will ask them for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for.
One more notation about the motion. I did not include that the request must be fulfilled within 14 days and refer the matter to compliance and amendments to monitor.
Right, thank you. Okay, let's go. And I just wanted to note there was a public commenter about not being able to download the items from the agenda. Underneath the description, there are a list of the parts of each for each item. Those are the links that are there. And yes, probably there should have been some directive there that these are the links. Click here. I just wanted to notate that for everyone. I know that was it's a little off the reservation than what we usually do, but that's how this was set up. Okay, let's go to the next item, please.
Member Schmidt's been waving his hands around. I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Member Schmidt.
Yeah, I wanted to say to Mr. Steinberg that we don't have any idea what actually was requested, like the scope of what was requested from Parks Alliance. We don't have any idea what was received from Parks Alliance. There's no evidence of any of that. And so to say, oh, well, I'm just going to re-request what they already requested, unless you can find out exactly what those things are, then I think basically Mr. Hooper needs you to go and ask Parks Alliance for what he's looking for. Because we have never been told those things. I just wanted to add that in because there's this assumption that like somehow it happened, and I don't see it. I don't see it. Okay, thank you for letting me have my 2 cents on that.
Okay, please call the next item.
Item number 10, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Chair's Report regarding possible response to the San Francisco Chronicle, June 27, 2021, entitled, I join the SF Sunshine Ordinance Task Force to expose corruption. Instead, I'm a cog in the machine.
Okay, thank you. I'm bringing this up because there was some commentary and by a former task force member, and this is where I was going to make that announcement. Kevin Frazier had submitted his letter of resignation a week or so ago, without really just kind of stating that it was not necessarily up his alley, and so he was felt that it was imperative for him to resign. In that, since then, he had written and came out, I believe, the following day, a op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle, and I'm sure everybody saw it. I got tons of messages about it, and I think there's some unfortunate misunderstandings about what we do, and and what this is about, I understand is sentiment. I think there's some value in some of his sentiments, but not in all of them. And I don't really think he's been here long enough on the task force to understand the history and how this operates. And he may not like the way it operates. Some of us may not like the way it operates. But that's where we are now. And as everybody knows, it's been somewhat of a big struggle for a lot of us and folks currently here. So I felt it important to open this up, have an open conversation about it. I think I know member Wong and Vice Chair Yankee and I, there was some discussion about writing a possible response to it. We thought we'd bring it to the task force. And I think Member Wong, if you have I think you wrote up some comments or points that maybe to get the discussion going, that'd be great.
Sure. This is Member Wong. A couple of things I had pointed out was just in the article, it's not mentioned that we are in a massive backlog currently, being that prior member Frazier was only part of the task force for about 4 months. I think he just couldn't see past the fact that we were stuck in this backlog. I think there's several other things that I took issue with. I thought the title of the article was unfortunate, given that he was resigning as a member. I think that would just make things more troublesome for us to actually find someone to replace him and fill his seat. Other things that I had issues with was just that, we are governed by the Sunshine Ordinance itself. There are specific rules and regulations that we must follow. There are procedures that we need to follow. It's not, I don't know, it's unfortunately or fortunately not the Wild West here, the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force meetings. Also, what else was I discussing? Oh, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So, being that we are stuck in this virtual world, it makes things much more difficult for everyone, not just us as the task force, but folks who attend, folks who, the petitioners, the respondents, for everyone, who's in attendance, who's just observing these meetings as well. What I also really took issue with was the fact that, as far as I know, Member Frazier did not bring up these concerns to anyone on the task force before he resigned. As far as I know, there weren't extra projects that he took on in order to try to further, the reach of the ordinance or the reach of the task force itself. And there are people on this task force who do take on those projects, who put in the effort. We are all volunteers, and we put in an effort outside of these meetings and outside of our committee meetings. There's an education committee that's specifically for educating the public. And on top of that, I don't know, there's just quite a lot. I have many, many bullet points, and so I'll just leave it at that and open it up for more comments from the rest of the members.
Member Neighbors.
I appreciate you covering all the comments, or all your bullet points, and your bullet points are my bullet points as well. Member Wong, one thing that I'd like to underscore, for me, my first reaction in reading the opinion was that it felt very demoralizing to the people who work so hard to bring their petitions to us. And by dismissing the request that they're making as insignificant, I thought that there was nothing that could be further from the truth. I know that it doesn't seem like every day we're making revolution here with all of our decisions, but there's never been a single case we've heard from any complaint that I thought was petty or not significant or couldn't be mapped to a social justice outcome. in some way. And I know for me, that's why I worked really hard to get on this commission. And all of those other things aside, with the letter to me, in a response, I want to make sure that the public knows that that is not the way that I hope that the rest of you feel about the cases that they bring to us, and that we do see the significance, and we do see ourselves as critical to helping them achieve very important goals.
Thank you, Member Stein. Then Member Padmanabhan.
Yeah, so I mean, I just want to say I did read that opinion piece as well. My biggest reservation about spending time trying to write a response to it is that I don't think I've ever seen a response to an opinion piece published. That's just kind of not something I've seen newspapers do. I did think that he had one or two valid points, or there was some truth to some of the things that he had to say, but I mostly felt like I just saw a lack of understanding of the rationale behind freedom of information laws, the mechanisms of democracy, the important work that the task force does. I would love for us to write op-eds that helped people in San Francisco understand what the task force does and how they can use this law, but I probably wouldn't bother with a response to this particular opinion piece.
Thank you. Member Padmanabhan. Unmute. There you go.
So I do agree with Member Stein. There's just one point I want to make here, and that is when we talk about backlogs, I'm not sure about the history, but how, there's always likely going to be a backlog. And so I think that point needs to be separated from all the other issues. I think that the prior member, Frazier, was touching upon. And really, he doesn't mention any, he doesn't give a substantial enough reason for why the Sunshine Ordinance does not work. All he said is that the task force does not spend enough time doing our high-level work, which is monitoring the effectiveness of the ordinance and recommending ways to improve it. I think perhaps because of the backlog, that might be an issue, but maybe not too. I think that's one point I think we need to consider. Maybe spending a little time doing that, maybe once every 3-4 months or so. So yeah, that's the point I wanted to make.
Okay. Member LaHood, then Vice Chair Yankee, then Member Highland.
Thank you. And I think others have said this before. I don't think he was really around long enough to have a full understanding of how we do what we do and how it works. Even if you come in with an understanding of the ordinance and California Public Records Act, it's only when you've been here long enough that you start to see patterns and trends. And I think that's when we can really start to make a difference. And yes, our meetings are long, and I know there were some other issues that he pointed out. But I have to say, in my experience on the task force, I appreciate all of our petitioners, because in my mind, they are helping us, and I've said this before, so if you heard me say this, they are helping us stress test the system so that we can make sure it works the way it's supposed to. And sometimes it's the cases that look small that can help us identify chronic issues and address inconsistencies. And I know we've talked about this before, but what would really help us would be to have a database so that we're not trusting, our own memories or sort of collective institutional memory to say, oh yeah, this is how we've done it before, but to be able to have a way to refer back to collections of cases that have things in common and know that we're addressing them consistently, all across the board. So that would be a dream improvement that I think would really help all of us do our jobs better and would help us do what we're doing faster. So get rid of the backlog.
Vice Chair Yankee.
I echo what everyone else said so far, and I'd actually add that I think our backlog is in a strange way actually reflective of how well we do actually work. Obviously, the Sunshine Task Ordinance envisions a variety of different city agencies and players to help enforce it, right? It talks about supervisor of records, which is the city attorney. It talks about the ethics commission. It talks about the DA, the attorney general, the mayor being in charge of implementing it. And yet, so many members of the public actually come to us because they know that we'll actually take them seriously, that we'll listen to their complaints. We don't take them as being insignificant requests, that we spend hours during a meeting. And so I'm actually, for as much as I would love to get through the backlog, and I think that's a great goal, and we do need to do things to get through it. I'm also encouraged by the fact that there's that many people who want to come to us and see us as the functional part of government, right? That actually gives them a voice and gives them a place to hear their concerns heard. And I just don't see how the article that former member Fraser really reflected that. I'm proud to be part of this task force, and I think that we do a lot of good work, and we, spend the time necessary to go through those things. I don't consider us part of the machine, as he put it. I actually think that that's why, like I said to start with, why we do have such a backlog, because people want us to weigh in on those things. And so I think that's good in a way. I'll leave it there.
Member Highland and Member Schmidt.
Yeah, just to chime in with what everyone else is saying, but particularly to echo Member Stein's sentiment. I don't think we should rise to a response that would legitimize or perhaps add weight to this piece. But for the record, I'll say that Member Fraser was a member of my subcommittee, EOTC, and I'm going off the top of my head here, but his attendance was very low. I'd say 1 out of 5 meetings he actually made it to, and those that he did, he had to leave early. So he already missed what was happening at the subcommittee level. And at that level, you're really dealing with the public one-on-one and sorting out apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So, did he, a short 4-month stint was not really long enough to see the work that we do. And coming from someone that's been on this task force for 10 years, we do a lot of good work. Maybe the small sampling of what he saw was, maybe a 20th of what I've seen in my time, or even less. And was it a bad patch? Perhaps. But I also wanted to point out that, we have had repeat requesters in the past. I think the repeat requesters that we have right now are very knowledgeable and have educated us. And I think it's good for Sunshine. I think, they've helped us move along. Now, our meetings are long. Well, guess what? That's because we actually have a full complement of members for once. Just to give you guys some perspective, we've had 6 or 7 members only, and it's been very hard to get quorum and let alone agreement and anything passed, because it only take 1 or 2 votes. And justice delayed is justice, or justice, was never served. Yeah. So that, just wanted to pass on those sentiments. I don't think we should write a response, though. That makes it looks like, it just gives weight to his article. I think it's one of those things that will be read yesterday and forgotten tomorrow, honestly. And you guys are doing great work, which is why I sit by and listen most of the time, because I've said all these things in the past years, and I like to hear it from you guys. But keep up the good work, and I like the direction of what we're doing, and really the nitty gritty of what we're getting to. And lastly, yes, database, yes, database, yes, database, please. If we keep mentioning it, keep saying it, keep asking for it in our budget, one day we may get it. That's all. Thanks.
Member Schmidt. Yeah, unmute.
Okay, thanks. I was on mute. Yeah, it didn't really resonate too much with me. I didn't feel like it would reflect what other people here would have thought. The main thing I wanted to point out is that I was a little bit put off by identifying a member of the public and criticizing them. I thought that was just bad form, because it's hard enough to go through our process and deal with, all the bureaucracy. But you guys don't. None of you. And I know it was anonymous, and anonymous can certainly defend anonymous. But I just thought that's a cheap shot to go after someone. So just wanted to make that one point. That's all.
Okay. Just a couple of closing thoughts from me. Again, just one, as you may have already heard, I did send an email to all you folks letting you know, and I'll let everybody else know that we did not get our funding request. It was didn't make the cut, even though we were pretty high up. We were under number 300 for ADVACs, and we did not get it. So we will not be enjoying another staffer, especially that would help us in much needed legal memos that we have been missing now for well over a year. And we will not be getting a formal database sooner than later. The contract for the Legistar system for the whole legislative branch is still being worked out, and it could take another, for all I know, another year before that gets settled. So in the meantime, we can't even get access to the current system. So I did also send out a reference, and I want to thank the anonymous speaker who is here tonight for loaning us a publicly available database. It's not the best. It's not, we can't do a whole lot with it, but it at least may offer some help, in a kind of slow train way to be able to research past orders of determination. And I appreciate that offer from the public when on a $10 billion budget, we can't afford $250,000 to help this important law and process out. So I'll stop there. Let's open it up for, so there's no, obviously it doesn't sound like there's not going to be any action. Let's open it up for public comment. We still have the administrator's report to get through, and then we'll be done. So I'll hand it off to Ms. Leger.
Do we have public commenters?
Sure.
I hear Mr. Warfield. Do we have another one? Okay, Mr. Warfield, it looks like you're it. Hang on a second. Are you ready, sir?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com and PO Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. As I've said before, I repeat this because it's not possible, as in a personal real meeting, in-person real meeting, for people to approach each other, and this is the minimal way that that might be possible, at least in one direction. Much of what you say, most of it, I would certainly agree with, but some of the things that are important, I think, haven't been said. The first thing is that I think that much of what Fraser complained about is within your power to do. Taking up the larger issues, that's something that I have quoted to you from 6730 repeatedly. Read 67.30. You have broad powers to report, to basically agitate, to persuade, to contact. You haven't turned out a report, an annual report, since 2016. So I think that a great deal of when you have the ability to do larger things, I mean, for example, what about objecting to the continuation of the restrictions on sunshine, even though everything in California opened up presumably June 15th? What about more publicly? I didn't know you were going for funding specifically, nor for how much. I don't know that that ever came up. Maybe the public would help you with that if you would make it visible. There's a range of things that you can and perhaps should do, and I think have even in some cases discussed, but it hasn't come to any action, all of which is in your power to do when you set your agendas. And like I said, read 6730 and some of the ones beyond. I think you should also be asking for support from the city attorney, who has apparently abandoned you fairly recently. The dumping on complainants, I think, was really very poor and completely irrelevant. It's like blame the victim, blame the customers. All the problems are because too many people. Well, maybe we should just lock the door or shoot them when they approach us. It was a ridiculous argument there. And that's mostly what I would say. I think you have a lot in your power to do, and I would love to see you do more of it. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Public comment is closed. Okay, thank you, folks. Let's move to the next item. Let's try to get out of here.
Item number 11, Administrator's Report, Complaints and Communications. So if you just hang on a second, I will get into my report and then we can talk. Okay, this report was prepared July 1st. I have listed all of the relevant dates for July, August, and September for each committee. And I'm assuming that each committee will be meeting throughout September. If we hear otherwise, we'll know. I will let everybody know. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 7 new cases in June. Uh, 2021 has increased by about 14 complaints. That's for item number 3. Item number 4, minutes from the committees. I did not provide the May Complaint Committee minutes last month, so I included them this month. And I also included the June 15th Complaint Committee minutes. We had 3 separate communications, public communications from anonymous to the task force, which were included. And we received a lot of emails in addition to the numerous telephone calls that take place. I counted about 317 emails. Let's see. There was also Victor put together a chart because we've had complaints about when members of the public have been receiving their packets. And to avoid that disruption, on page 39, let me take a look at what page it is. Page 2717, Victor provided us with a chart that he drafted for each day of the month. And when, you have to excuse me, when the agenda packets are posted online, when we need to get document submissions before the agendas are uploaded, notice of hearing sent to parties. It's a chart. anybody has any comments about that, I'm happy to take information. Victor's here. He can probably provide more information if you have questions.
At your discretion, Chair Wolf, I can go through it quickly.
Go for it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. I'm just going to go ahead and take the full task force meeting as an example, as the committee meetings are only one day off. So approximately 4 to 5 days before the meeting is going to occur, we post the agendas online, and that's usually on a Thursday or a Friday. That is listed on day 4 or 5 on my chart. And I believe in order for us to receive all documents 5 days prior to the board meeting, we need to get documents by about the 8th day but prior to the meeting. And I have that listed as the 8th day. That would be a Tuesday, which would be 5 working days before the meeting. And in order for us to make the request to the parties in time, we do need the chair of the committees to let us know at least 14 days prior to the meeting. That way we can send off the request to the respondent and complainants, and we would send that off on approximately a Wednesday or Thursday, and they would need to respond to us by the following week on a Tuesday for us to have it 5 working days before the meeting. In going along with that, the one thing that we don't address in any of our procedures is if we do need to mail a notice of hearing to somebody, we probably would need to provide an advance notice of a meeting about 21 days prior to the meeting, just to give them a little additional time for mail to go back and forth. I have that listed as day 20 and 21, advance notice of possible scheduling to people who we can only contact via US mail. And that's just a quick summary. If we get the chairs to finalize 14 days in advance of the meetings, we will notify the parties of the meetings, and they can respond by 8 days before the meeting. And we will be able to forward anything we receive to all the parties, even via US mail if needed, and be able to get our agendas up by that Thursday or Friday on the 5 days before the meeting. If there's any questions, I know this might be a little confusing by stating days before meetings, but if there's any questions, the chart is there. It is highlighted to try to give a range of dates of when we need to get things done. If there's any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Or if anybody has questions about the administrator's report, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay. I'll just say thank you for creating that chart, Victor. Yeah, I was getting a lot of comments and complaints from certain members of the public that only want snail mail, and they, because of the way the mail operates, or they weren't able to possibly get their the agendas and their and prepare at the same time as everyone else who could download it off the internet. So this is to kind of create parity for everyone, and so it just means we have to, work a little sooner in order to get these out so everybody can obtain them. I remember back in the early 2000s when that's all we did was send things out by snail mail. There's very, very, very few, folks that there's a big digital divide at the time. So, especially with big documents over the internet was with really slow speed. So, please help, and it's be much appreciated.
I just want to I just want to make a comment about large documents. With respect to the Hooper case, he probably had 1,000 pages in each one of his files for both of them, 61 and 62. And the reason I divide it has to do with how much data there actually is on each page. I have a certain amount of information that I'm allowed to include in when I go to send the records to the computer and the computer uploads all the material. So that's why things are divided the way they are.
Yeah, I will tell you, back in the, I would say in the mid 2000s when Sunshine was really beginning to pick up, when I came on board about 2005, 2006, we used to get on a regular basis, 500-600 page agendas. They used to get sent to my house. Would not fit through the mail slot. So thank goodness for the internet at this point. But yeah, it's just tough with all those records. Okay, hearing nothing else for the administrator's report, we'll assume that's accepted into the record here.
I also point out something, Bruce, that you and I had talked about, and that is many times I get attachments from people that are 85, 125 pages long. And so what I've done is I just take a sample of what that document is. It could be a contract, and I would include like the cover page and the table of contents. I know that for Mr. Malloy's matter, I did include the entire contract, but his file is not that big. But for many of the documents that Mr. Hooper was provided, they were lengthy. And so I couldn't put everything in there, and still I had to divide it up extensively, and it takes time.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment on the administrator's report.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just typing. It's nothing. Are you ready, Mr. Warfield?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Peter Warfield, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com, P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California 94117-0544. I very recently asked the administrator for what the procedures were for preparing agendas and minutes, and apparently there was very little documentation. She did send me something. I'm not sure if the answer is completed, but in any case, one of the things that I have found very problematic is waiting 9 months or 10 months or even a few months if it wasn't for COVID, and then suddenly getting basically a command to appear at a meeting. It always struck me as odd that there was never any question as to whether that would be possible or convenient or anything else for the complainant. Obviously, the respondent, they're full-time workers for the city. They have occasional appearances. Certainly for the complainant, it's a lot of work. And especially when a lot of time goes by, memory fades a bit. One has to consult notes perhaps to refresh. So preparing materials is quite a job, even if it's minimal in quantity. So the idea that one would get 3 days notice or 2 days notice, which we got 2 days notice in March for an April meeting, and we immediately, as quickly as we possibly could, let the administrator know that that just wasn't enough time. We needed more time than 2 days to meet the agenda packet requirement. And the idea that we would wait and wait and wait with no word and no concept of when anything might be happening, and then suddenly out of the blue have 2 days notice to put material in the agenda packet, that just seemed wrong. And it didn't seem to give much time for having a replacement being put in our slot. The reason we went quick to say that it wasn't possible was so that somebody else might have a chance. So I think it's good to discuss. I think it needs to discuss. The procedures need to be discussed, and certainly the timelines to give people more time, and for you to be able to substitute somebody else if a person can't make it on the commanded date. I think some of the other procedures might be reviewable too, but this timeline I think is particularly difficult. I hope this straightens it out, but I think it should be discussed as an agenda item. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, public comment is closed. Let's move to the next item.
Item number 12, announcements, comments, questions, and future agenda items by members of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force.
Okay, members. Go ahead, Member Stein.
Yeah, so I want to again raise the issue of the state of our meeting packets. Today's meeting packet clocked in at 2,757 pages and was made available to members 5 days before the meeting. I went through every page of the packet, even though it took most of my time over the past week, and I kind of felt lucky that I had the time for that. And of this 2,757 pages, I would guess that at least 2,000 pages were probably either redundant or not particularly relevant. They were either unnecessary to consider the cases at hand, or they contained redundant items, some of which appeared numerous times throughout the records. And so I think oftentimes important information also was buried in the midst of a long PDF. And because no material was indexed, and some of these links were missing or not working as well, could be very difficult to kind of negotiate the packet if you wanted to go back and look for things. So because of how it was assembled, I think it was difficult to know, too, what documents mattered most, or to refer back to them once you understood their importance when they came in sometimes kind of random orders. And I really don't think we should accept this state of affairs. And I would like to propose as a future agenda item that we address how to organize the packets so that they don't waste human resources and so that they include only relevant material. We've already had the suggestion that all supporting documentation be labeled and indexed and appear only once in a packet. And this, I think, is an entirely reasonable requirement. There are also items in the packet that pertain to administration and scheduling that I don't think need to be put in front of the entire task force when we're trying to, look at what's relevant to a case. And finally, I think there are items that I would consider the heart of the cases that come before us, like the petitioners and the respondent statements, which should really appear towards the front of every packet. In addition to determining a reasonable and efficient way to organize the packet, I would propose that the deadline for materials being submitted to SOTF or to SOTF be moved up to whatever date is necessary for the administrator to compile and distribute them with maybe at least 10 days notice of an advance meeting. Very difficult to go through 3,000 pages of material in 5 days. And this timeline, if we had at least 10 days, or if we could, streamline these packets or index the content that appear in them, it would allow us to read them and ensure that they get to the petitioners and respondents in time for our meetings as well. So I think a more efficient packet, not only would it be, would less be more in this case in terms of us being able to really get to the heart of what these cases are about, but it might also free up some of our time so that we could address some of the bigger picture issues that are under our jurisdiction instead of just, being mired in trying to get through a lot of redundant and sometimes irrelevant material that appear pretty often in these packets. So I just wanted to say I'm going to continue to raise this issue until we can address this problem.
I'll be happy to put it on an agenda if you're requesting it.
I am.
Okay, and we'll do it for August. Okay, Member Wong, and then Member LaHood.
Yeah, I just had a quick thing. I think I brought this up in the compliance and amendments meeting as well, but there's a really great podcast that's in partnership with KQED and NPR called On Our Watch, which is basically investigating different cases that came out of the release of documents through SB 1421. So just wanted to recommend that folks give it a listen.
Member LaHood.
Yes, I want to just circle back with the thing we mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting with anonymous speakers. Could we discuss setting a new policy that as long as we're doing remote meetings, that the first time anyone speaks they either need to give a name or tell us that they're going to be anonymous for the duration of the meeting, and then we give them each a number, and they have to identify themselves with that number every time they speak. I think it would help with keeping track of who's saying what and for the future minutes. And I don't know what it takes to set a policy like that, but I'd like to propose that.
I agree with that. I had tried that at some of our earlier meetings last year, and it did not go well because it was hard to keep people remembering who to identify themselves as. I've had a little bit of a back and forth with one of the anonymouses. He now, well, I shouldn't say he, I don't know what his gender is, but they now sign their name as any moose, anonymous, instead of anonymous. And so that's how I know that it's that particular person or entity. But yeah, it's not easy. And I had some back and forth with them about that. And I mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. And I just think that, we do take as much care as possible, but we're in a public setting here. If you're walking outside, anybody can take a picture of you. There's no law that says you can't. So anonymity is based upon in a public space is based upon your own ability to protect your identity. In your private home, it's a different story. So I agree with you on that one. I'm thinking also based on Member Stein's assertion that maybe we should have some take 2 meetings per year and turn them into at least half the meeting be a retreat, a little retreat to go over some of these items so we have some time to do it instead of just a mere mention of them. And then, because I do a lot of this, I take your concerns very seriously. And believe me, Vice Chair Yankee gets an earful, from me and also now Member Wong, who is shadowing us, to try to figure out how best we can optimize and streamline our process. But it takes time. We're all got full-time jobs. It takes time to think about it. Sometimes I get a brainstorm in the middle of the day because I'm working on something else. It just kind of works that way. And without enough staff, with somebody who's like constantly focusing on it, in various ways. I know Cheryl has a ton of stuff on her plate, so sometimes it's just not enough. And Victor splits his time between probably 3 or 4 other commissions and and other work that he does. So I appreciate everybody's input, but I think we'd do better if we had some concerted time where we can spend an hour discussing like the particular item that you brought up, Member Stein. We just give ourselves enough time to be able to have a full conversation about it. I like to have that done usually in committees. In the past, it's been more fruitful because there's more flexibility in a committee. There's more time. But it makes it hard to do it with the full task force in trying to get everybody's schedules to kind of coincide for everybody to meet. I can be guaranteed almost everybody coming on a meeting of our full task force, but not in between, unless it's months in advance. So unless we do it that way, if you want it to be more expedited, go ahead and bring it up on any of your committees to take up any one of these subjects. You can try to hash out as much as you can there and then bring forward a proposal, and then we can have a little bit of a shorter discussion here at the task force and try to get things narrowed down. So it's another way to do it too. So, all right, anything else? Okay, public comment.
Yes, please.
You ready, sir?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
No one. Peter Warfield, Executive Director, Library Users Association, Library Users 2004 at yahoo.com. P.O. Box 170544, San Francisco, California, 94117-0544. First of all, I'd like to appreciate all of the comments that folks are making, which have to do with presumably making the task force more effective, more efficient. I particularly want to agree with Member Stein. I remember when 650 pages seemed like a huge thing to try and digest basically over a weekend. I think it's crucial for the effective functioning, both for the members and for the public, to give a lot more time to review materials, including agendas, and to organize the material in a way that makes not only indexed, but makes it meaningful. I've always thought that the absolute minimum requirement and the basic requirement would be the very first thing in the packet would be the complaint. This is the opportunity and the kickoff for any hearing, and that's a complaint. Then there's the respondent's response. And then there may be additional materials presented by the respondent and the complainant. Those to me are the core. And very often these materials are buried, not in the front, but all scattered around amongst, as Member Stein said, tremendous numbers of stuff that you might want to include in the packet, but maybe could be pushed to the back. Administrative notices sent back and forth. The complaint cover memo sent to the respondent. There's a whole range of stuff that's very, very irrelevant to the core and of what's going on. And I think that that needs to be really thought out and discussed and made part of your whatever bylaws or complaint procedure. And there are a number of other things that I think, comments, I didn't hear anybody say what a lot of work you put in today, and to appreciate that. And as I've said before, I think next request is a disaster for the public and should be on an agenda. You apparently have had some contact with DTIS about it, and so that would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, public comment is closed. Final item.
Item number 13, adjournment.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. This is Member Wong.
Is there a second?
Member Stein, I second it.
Okay, moved by Member Wong, second by Member Stein. Can we take it by acclamation without objection? I think we can do it. We can do that without a roll call vote. Okay, thank you, everybody. And sorry for, again, another very, very late meeting. But thank you for hanging in there and maintaining quorum. Appreciate it. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Victor, you want to hang out for a bit?
Thank you all.
I want to stop the recording.